Titan AE was one of my endlessly replayed movies when I was a kid. We had it on DVD, and we beat that box to smithereens watching it over and over again. Its characters, its atmosphere, its freaky blue antagonists were so interesting to me, and I still consider it to be a comfort movie of sorts, even if I don't watch it often. The idea of it is comforting, but when I watched it again very recently, despite the familiarity, I felt fixated on its world building in a new way. Titan AE presents a very unique take on life after Earth, and that's what we're gonna take a look at this week. Let's go.
In or out?
Huh? Oh, in.
So yeah, Titan AE's world building is pretty cool. There are tons of different races across space, humans on Earth being one of them, until a race made of pure energy called the Dredge decides that humanity poses a threat to them and ruthlessly destroys the entire planet in a matter of minutes. A large globular spaceship called the Titan, created on Earth by Cale's father, Sam Tucker, has the ability to preserve the entirety of Earth's species and initiate the creation of a new planet Earth somewhere else in the galaxy. Between the time of Earth exploding and the Titan's activation, humans live in drifter colonies, which seem to be somewhat organized into ethnic enclaves, at least from the little amount of evidence that we see in Akima's drifter colony home called New Bangkok, although not all of the residents of New Bangkok are of Thai origin. Humans who live amongst aliens, like Cale on the Tau 14 space station, are seen as a lower class of species because their planet no longer exists. Smaller spaceships exist, typically maintained by just a handful of people running missions of some kind. Corso, Akima, Preed, Goon, and Stith man a ship called the Valkyrie. Around Tau 14, people do work in the actual vacuum of space, wearing spacesuits and riding space bikes that allow them to move independently. Given the nature of the spacesuits, it seems like space can indeed kill you, but Corso and Cale at one point are exposed to the naked vacuum of space when their space pod cracks, and they simply hold their breath for a moment while Corso propels them into the Valkyrie. We don't see too much space food, but the food we do see seems to be served still alive. Holographic projectors are used for map exploration, calling each other, leaving messages, and firing guns. Trees can be made of pure hydrogen, and living beings can be made of pure energy. So they seem to have a different system of physics than we do, or the writers just decided to not care about physics, but I'm gonna go with the world building version, which defines a system for them. I think it's safe to say that the world building takes a few cues from Star Wars, but don't most space-themed things, especially from this era? Character writing. First of all, Cale and Akima might have been my first ever cartoon crushes. Their character designs are great, and I love their dynamic. I think they're a really charismatic pair of protagonists whose interactions and dialogue feel very natural. They have one of the most mature and evolved relationships of any couple that I saw in a movie as a kid. Look at this scene from the end of the movie and the way they hold and look at each other. I feel like I'm intruding by watching it. That's chemistry. While we see a day in Cale's childhood before he was separated from his father and his home planet was blown up, and therefore we easily understand why he is the way he is, we meet Akima as an adult. But the script does a pretty good job of giving us clues into her backstory, her motivations for wanting to find the Titan, and the reasons that she'd side with Cale rather than her captain when shit hits the fan. Speaking of Akima's captain, the way this movie handled Corso's character is surprisingly nuanced, and I honestly had forgotten the twists and turns he plays in the plot before I rewatched it again. The primary villain of the movie is obviously the Dredge, but they also make Corso into one before almost killing him, and then having him redeem himself before the credits roll.
Sometimes, kid, people just help each other out.
I don't really want to say more than that, in case you haven't seen the movie. Watching this video isn't enough. Please watch the movie. I really think it's worth watching. Somehow within the last few days, it seems to have been put on YouTube free to watch with ads, which might be worth taking advantage of, even if the upload is only in 480p.
Titan AE. See space like you've never seen before. Titan AE. Buy it on video and DVD.
Titan AE, you're Cale Tucker. You can control energy. Vehicles light up at your touch. When the last humans take to their ships and power up as they attempt to escape the evil Dredge, it's up to you to break through and take out their shrieking queen. Your adventure has just begun to find the Titan. New electronic-powered Titan Titan AE. Queen Dredge sold separately. Vehicles come with figure as shown.
So this movie gets a disproportionate degree of hate from people who haven't seen it in ages, who insist that because it didn't do well in the box office, the movie itself is a failure. Enough videos have eviscerated this movie for its financial performance. I have no desire to do that. In fact, I want to present a counterpoint. Art, when spoken about in our cultural zeitgeist, should not be defined by its financial success. Yes, I know it's a production made by a company and that production company's ultimate goal is to make money. But if you operate from that argument, you deny the artistic endeavors of the people who made this because art, animation, writing is their life's work and passion. It's really hard to discuss this topic because currently in our society, all animation made at this level is ultimately funded as a vehicle for generating profit for corporations. But I don't think it's right to say that a movie with beautiful artwork and a solid story that generated $36.8 million in box office revenue is a failure, especially when $30 million of its estimated $75 to $90 million budget was spent before the project was even designated to be an animated film. Yeah, so when Titan AE was in its conceptual infancy around 1998, it was going to be a live-action film, and it seems like it might have been called Planet Ice. Scriptwriting duties had been passed from Ben Edlund, creator of The Tick, to Joss Whedon, creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly, and both of those guys still have screenplay credit, before finally ending up in Art Vitello's hands, before he was fired after $30 million were spent on the movie's development with no progress. Which is a fucking insane amount of money to be spent with no work being accomplished. This movie had the odds stacked against it from the beginning. Don Bluth and Gary Goldman had recently completed Anastasia and seen great success there. With no other scripts on the table and the risk of laying off the staff of Fox Animation Studios after their first movie, the chairman of 20th Century Fox gave Bluth and Goldman the script for Titan AE, who got to work despite not having worked on science fiction previously. They were given $75 million and 19 months to produce the movie, but during the film's production, Fox Animation Studios went through multiple budget cuts. In 1999, over 300 of the 380 people on the animation staff were laid off in order to, quote, make films more efficiently, and much of the movie's animation had to be outsourced to indie companies. People act like Fox Animation Studios was this huge thing that Titan AE ruined, but they only made 2 fucking movies, bro! Anastasia performed well, and Titan AE didn't. Pixar and DreamWorks were showing out with their 3D animation, and Anastasia and Titan AE used digital ink and paint. They were basically a baby studio funded by a big corporation, launching with technology that was already behind the times, and they couldn't keep up with the big boys. I suspect, though, that the real problem is that Anastasia, while having a darker tone than Disney movies, appealed to the Disney princess market of young girls, while Titan AE was much more grown up and didn't have a neat, convenient market niche to fill. The narrative that animation is only for kids is still pervasive to this day, and was especially so around this time. So this movie that seems to be made for all ages and appeals to adults maybe wasn't being seen by enough adults. Laying off most of their animation staff probably didn't help either. While watching this, I had the feeling that the movie would have been cool as a video game, and there actually was a game planned. An early playable version was showcased at the 2000 Electronic Entertainment Expo in LA, and there are actually several short videos on YouTube demonstrating some of the gameplay for the PlayStation and the boppin' tunes in the background.
Enemy warships have entered Earth's solar system.
Launch remaining escape craft.
Evacuate! Evacuate!
15 years after Earth. Strap in. Break out.
You can't beat the Dredge. They're pure energy.
Yeah, right.
Get ready.
What?
For the human race. Titan AE. Rated PG.
Should I get out and push?
Imagine the Earth without the Super Bowl. Now imagine the Super Bowl without the Earth. This summer, the end of the world is the beginning of the next generation of filmed animation. Titan AE on June 16th, get ready for life after Earth.
Was this movie for kids? There are a number of merciless deaths, plentiful space violence, a real adult romance, and scenes of both of the main characters naked and hidden behind a towel. I think that all of these factors are due to the film originally being planned as a live-action movie seemingly for adults. When else has a movie planned for adults been turned into an animated film marketed towards children? Who is expecting it to perform well with that market? I think this movie is great and I enjoy it at my age, but I can't stop thinking about that. Many of the scenes were actually acted out by animation staff with handmade props, and the animation is a blend of 3D environments and 2D character animation and background paintings. Watching the character animation throughout this film is a treat for me, as the humans and most of the aliens outside of the dredge were hand-drawn. I've said this before, but I adore watching hand-drawn animation and seeing the way animation artists decide to draw every frame of someone moving, speaking, articulating their bodies. It's fascinating to me, and it's just such a flex to be able to understand the human form enough to draw an animated version of it moving. It's amazing to me. I love the scenes where Cale is trapped in the dredge ship. The character animation for Cale for this entire sequence is stunning, and the lighting looks fantastic too. I remember being so fascinated and intrigued by the way he used his fingers to control the electricity and escape his cell, and it still looks amazing. The storyboard artists and animators also went with some really nice dynamic shots that show you what's going on from interesting angles and make the action feel more real and lifelike. There is some obviously early 3D animation in here, but it doesn't always show its age in a bad way. There are some sequences that I think still look pretty cool, like the hydrogen forest chase and the ice field where the Titan is hidden. The dredge are a mixed bag in terms of aesthetics. I really wish I could see this movie upscaled to 4K because I feel like the intense blue of their designs can sometimes contribute to them looking a little muddy and indistinct in its current resolution. But I think the design of the dredge is super dope regardless. When this movie came out, they looked incredible, phantasmic, otherworldly to me. Look at the dredge mother! Her face is like a horrifying void. It's like she's made of electric flowers. She's absolutely ethereal and so alien. I've never seen anything like this. Well, kinda. He's like the Sheehan version. I don't think the music aged super well, choosing sounds similar to the rap, rock, and pop-punk alternative tunes that were popular in the 2000s is not surprising, but it dates the movie deeply for me, and while their mood suits the more upbeat moments in the film well, there are also times when it feels a bit out of sync with the emotions of the scene. Creed's song Higher was in the trailers, which is especially funny and very late 90s. Everyone's got a Creed voice inside of them, no exceptions. Get me to 50k subs and I'll show you mine. Titan AE was a labor of love from Bluth, Goldman, and their animation team, despite a rocky production history and the odds being stacked against them. The character animation is stunning, the story is unique, and the world building is immersive and interesting for all ages. This movie, to me, seems like a solid example of a film maligned because of its circumstances rather than because of its art or story. These days, others' opinions of a media entity tend to overwhelm the actual content of that entity. People hate Rick and Morty because of its fan base. People think The Simpsons isn't good anymore because they heard that from somebody when they haven't watched an episode in the last 10 years. People think Titan AE is a failure and overwhelmingly label it as such because it didn't net enough money in theaters. But if we were to put all these things in a time capsule and someone watched them 1,000 years from now, they wouldn't see the Twitter discourse or the toxic fan base. They would see the art unmarred and uninterrupted by capitalism and the incessant need for everyone to share their uninformed, recycled opinions of what they think about everything all the time. It's important to remember that animation is one of the most laborious forms of storytelling, a medium that can do literally anything, a labor of love and sheer creativity, and that it doesn't deserve to be remembered for how many bucks it lined a CEO's pockets with. I guess it might seem like I'm just grasping at any positive straws or reasoning to defend this movie to someone who doesn't like it, but the truth is it's close to my heart and I see the cracks in the glass now that I've watched it again, even if I still enjoy it. But in a sea of people ragging on this movie that was so instrumental to my childhood and was such a labor of love and creativity, I just wanted to offer a different and more positive take. Form your own opinions about this stuff. Regurgitating someone else's is boring.
I am the queen of the universe. The waves pulse. They engulf me in the water